I want to talk to you today about something that almost nobody talks about openly. But every single person who has ever worked in an office, a warehouse, a shop floor, a hospital, a school has experienced the favorite. You know exactly who I mean. The person who can do no wrong. Who arrives late and nobody says anything. Who misses deadlines and gets an extension. Who takes credit for other people's work and gets praised for it. Who makes mistakes that would end anyone else's career and walks away without a single consequence. While you who arrive on time, you who meet every deadline, you who do the work and say nothing when it disappears into someone else's report. You get pulled up for being 5 minutes late on a Tuesday. You know this person. You have worked next to this person. You have watched this person operate for years with a level of protection so complete, so consistent, so absolutely maddening that you started to wonder whether you were imagining it. You were not imagining it. The woman in today's story was not imagining it either. She worked next to the office favorite for 6 years. Watched her, documented her, said nothing, while quietly, methodically, patiently building something so airtight, so completely undeniable, that when the moment finally came there was nowhere left for anyone to hide. Not the favorite, and not the manager, who had protected her for 6 years. Welcome back to Quietly Destroyed. This one is for every person who has ever been the most competent person in a room and been treated like the least important. Her name on Reddit is 6 years of notes. I'll call her Priya. Priya had worked at a regional National Health Service administrative department in the Midlands for 8 years. Patient records management, systems administration, compliance reporting. Unglamorous work, essential work that, when done correctly, nobody noticed, and when done incorrectly, had real consequences for real people. Priya was exceptionally good at her job, not in a showy way, not in a way that filled meetings with impressive language, but in the way that actually matters. The work was always right, always on time, always done. She had been in the department for 4 years. When a new colleague joined the team, a woman named Francesca. Francesca was, from the very first day, exactly the kind of person who fills a room with a loud laugh, strong opinions, and an effortless ability to say the right thing to the right person at exactly the right moment. And from the very first week, she and the department manager, a man named Keith, had a rapport that Priya had never seen develop so quickly. With coffee runs together, lunch twice a week, private jokes that started in Keith's office and arrived in the open plan 30 minutes later, already fully formed and already funny to everyone, except the people who hadn't been there. Priya noticed, filed it away, and got on with her work. The first incident happened 4 months after Francesca joined. A compliance report, quarterly, non-negotiable, legally required, was submitted late. Francesca had been responsible for one section of the report. Her section, incomplete, had delayed the entire submission by 11 days. Keith called a team meeting. Priya arrived expecting a conversation about process improvement. What she got was Keith explaining that the delay had been caused by a systems issue, which had since been resolved, and that the team needed to be more aware of submission deadlines going forward. No name mentioned, no individual accountability, a systems issue. Francesca sat at the table and said nothing. Priya opened a new document on her personal laptop that evening, titled it Observations, and wrote her first entry: date, incident, what was said, what was not said, who was present. The second incident: 6 months later, a patient record misfiled in a department dealing with sensitive medical data. A misfiled record is not a small thing. It required a formal incident report, which Keith completed, and Priya saw the completed form. The incident was attributed to administrative oversight during a period of high workload. No individual named. High workload. The workload at the time, as Priya's own records showed, had been normal. She added the incident to her document: Incident 3, Incident 4, Incident 5. Over 6 years, Priya recorded 23 separate incidents, each one attributable to Francesca, each one managed by Keith in a way that removed individual accountability, each one redirected toward the team, the systems, the workload, the process, never the person. And alongside the 23 incidents, Priya recorded something else: 8 occasions where work that Priya had produced appeared in reports or presentations under Francesca's name, not in dramatic ways, just a summary Priya had written appearing in Francesca's quarterly update, a process improvement Priya had designed, presented by Francesca in a departmental review. Small things, the kind of small things that individually could always be explained but together told a very clear story. Priya documented all of it, 31 entries over 6 years, and told nobody. In year 6, something happened that was different from all the previous incidents, significantly different. A patient complaint had been escalated to the department regarding a letter that had been sent to the wrong address containing sensitive medical information. The letter had been prepared and sent by Francesca under National Health Service Data Protection Guidelines and the United Kingdom General Data Protection Regulation. Sending patient data to the wrong recipient is a serious breach, reportable to the Information Commissioner's Office, and this incident would require a thorough investigation with careful consideration of the circumstances surrounding it, with potential consequences for the organization and for the individual responsible. Keith's initial response was to prepare an incident report that attributed the error to a system autofill error in the patient management software. Priya read the draft of this report, which was shared with the team for review, and for the first time in 6 years she did not say nothing. She sent Keith a short email: professional, measured, specific. She noted that she had been present when the letter was prepared, that she had observed the address being manually entered, not autofilled, and that she wanted to ensure the incident report accurately reflected what had occurred given the regulatory implications. She CC'd the department's compliance officer and the team's HR representative. Keith called her into his office 30 minutes later. He was not pleased. He told Priya in carefully chosen words that the incident was being handled appropriately, that her email had caused unnecessary alarm, that she should have come to him directly rather than copying other parties. Priya listened to everything Keith said and then said, "Of course I understand. I just wanted to make sure we were all protected in case the Information Commissioner's Office requested documentation." Keith said the Information Commissioner's Office would not be involved. Priya said, "I hope you are right, but given that this is a reportable breach, I wanted to be sure there was a clear record of what actually happened for everyone's protection, including yours." She smiled and went back to her desk. That evening, Priya opened her observations document, added entry 32, and then made a decision she had been considering for 2 years. She compiled everything, all 32 entries, formatted into a clear, chronological, professionally presented document with dates, with descriptions, with the names of witnesses present at each incident, with copies of relevant emails, which she had been quietly forwarding to her personal account for 3 years. She attached the draft incident report Keith had circulated, with the specific paragraph about the autofill error highlighted, and alongside it, a screenshot of the patient management system's own activity log, which she had legitimately accessed as part of her system's administration role, showing that the letter had been manually addressed, not autofilled. She read the completed document, 64 pages, 6 years of observations, every incident, every cover, every attribution, every piece of work taken without credit. And then she made 3 copies, one for herself, one for her solicitor, whom she had already consulted on 2 previous occasions, and one in a sealed envelope, which she placed in her bag, and carried to work the following morning. The Information Commissioner's office had been notified of the data breach not by Priya, but by the patient who had received the wrong letter, and who had called the department 3 days after Keith's incident report was finalized, to inform them that the information they had received belonged to someone else. The Information Commissioner's office investigation was formal. An investigator visited, requested documentation, interviewed staff, including Priya. Priya's interview lasted 40 minutes. She answered every question clearly, factually, without embellishment. And at the end, the investigator asked, "Is there anything else you feel would be relevant to this investigation?" Priya said, "Yes," and placed the sealed envelope on the table. She said, "This is a document I have prepared in my capacity as a member of this team. It contains observations I have made over 6 years regarding departmental processes and incident management. I believe it is relevant to your investigation. I am providing it in the interests of full transparency, and I hope it will be taken into consideration." The investigator opened the envelope and read the cover page, looked at the index, and said, "How long did this take you to prepare?" Priya said, 6 years. The ICO investigation concluded 4 months later, and the department received a formal reprimand. The incident report, the one attributing the data breach to a system autofill error, was found to be inaccurate. Keith was placed on a formal performance improvement plan, and Francesca was subject to a separate disciplinary process, which, given the document Priya had provided, covered significantly more than the single data breach. The outcome of that disciplinary process, Priya did not share publicly. She said only, it was proportionate. 3 months after the investigation, Priya was offered a senior role in a different department with a different manager, and she accepted. Her first performance review, in the new role, described her as one of the most meticulously professional members of staff the department had encountered in years. She wrote at the end of her Reddit post, "People have asked me why I waited 6 years, and the honest answer is, I wasn't waiting to destroy anyone. I was waiting until I had something that could not be dismissed, because I had seen what happened when people raised concerns without evidence. They became the problem." So, she made sure that when she spoke, she was holding 64 pages that made it impossible to dismiss anything she said, not because she wanted to end anyone's career, but because she wanted to make sure that this time someone actually listened. And then, right at the end, she wrote, "Keith got his performance improvement plan, Francesca got her disciplinary process, and I got a window office. I'm not saying the universe is fair, but sometimes it is." Francesca thought for 6 years that the protection she enjoyed was permanent, that Keith would always be there, that the pattern would continue indefinitely because it always had. She did not account for the person sitting quietly at the next desk, writing everything down. Keith thought that managing incidents the way he did was protecting his team. He was wrong. He was protecting one person at the expense of everyone else, and the person he least expected had been keeping score the entire time. I want to say something to everyone listening who is in a workplace where this is happening, where someone is consistently protected, where accountability seems to apply to everyone, except one specific person. Document it, not to use immediately, not to threaten anyone, but because the moment that pattern meets a formal investigation, a regulatory body, a situation that cannot be managed away, you want to already be holding the truth in your hands, 64 pages of it, if necessary. Priya didn't destroy anyone, she simply told the truth with 6 years of evidence to back it up. That is not revenge, that is accountability, and sometimes those two things look exactly the same. That is the end of episode 14 here on Quietly Destroyed. This one is for everyone who has ever watched the wrong person get away with it for far too long. Leave a comment below. Tell me about your Francesca or your Keith, because I have a feeling this comment section is going to be the most relatable we have ever had. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we have a story about a woman whose ex-husband tried to hide assets during their divorce. He was very clever about it. She was clever, and she had been paying attention for 11 years. I'll see you then. Document everything, know your worth, and remember, the best revenge is always served cold. And love.